After a tarot reading with a cursed deck of cards, a group of bland characters are chased down one after another by supernatural forces. Honestly, I don't think a tarot card has ever been as much of a bad omen than the Screen Gems logo at the start of a movie. I guess that makes us hopeless against fate too. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, he's a Libra. It's Tim.
I'm an Aries, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, okay.
How you didn't know that?
Tim, it's honestly a shock that I even know my own, to be honest. Right? I do know my own. I'm Taurus. Not that it means anything. Ooh. It's all a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but...
Hot take.
Yeah, I'm coming in strong with this one. We're here today, everyone, to talk about Tarot. As a horror movie podcast, we get together and talk about a film. It's that simple. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do, and we'll give you a warning before we do start with the spoilers, but we'll give you some impressions and some general feelings first. If you are enjoying the show, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you're watching on YouTube, and of course you can support our content and get a bonus episode as well as some other goodies on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the show. And I feel like every time I'm doing that little bit of an intro just to plug some things before we get started, Tim's always got this smirk in his face, like it's like he's threatening to like interrupt me and say something stupid just to throw a wrench in the proceedings.
As you're talking about doing impressions, I was just like, ooh, like is Pete gonna bust out his like Ronald Reagan, or like I don't know, maybe do like a Woody Allen or Jim Carrey or something?
Who said anything about impressions? I didn't say I was going to do impressions.
Yeah, rewind the tape. You're going to say before we give our impressions.
Jesus. This is what I put up with, people. This is what I have to suffer through. You actually made a good joke on social media today, Tim, and I thought, oh, Tim actually made a good joke. It had a setup and a payoff, and then you hit me with that shit. Right? Earlier today, Tim posted out that the worst thing about being a dad is that he has to watch the same dumb TV shows that his kids watch, but then the punchline at the end of the message was that I'm so sick of watching Yellowstone, which was a funny ending to that sentence.
Yeah, I save the best things for my 415 tweets.
All right. So yes, tarot was tarot. Tarot, of course, as in tarot cards, if you're not familiar with that term. I love that the movie even has someone mispronounce it, so someone can correct them and say it's pronounced tarot, not tarot.
And let's just get this out of the way. Yes, the movie was originally called Horoscope, and yes, that is an infinitely better title.
What's so funny about that is that I was looking at our to-do list for all the movies coming out in 2020, and there's a lot. Like, we've got stuff from the first half of the year still to do. Strangers Chapter 1 still to come. But then there's a bunch of things we've actually got scheduled for October and just before and after, although Tim keeps pushing one or two of them just to make my life a misery.
For better stuff. It's not like I'm saying, like...
True, yeah, okay. In this particular case, you said, hey, I've got a better option instead, and I agree it's a better option, but sometimes we end up doing Taste the Blood of Dracula instead of a relevant 2024 movie, because you're like, I don't want to pay for Imaginary, Peter, can we wait until it's on Netflix? Anyway.
I can't bring myself to do it.
Anyway, what was I getting at? What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I was looking at the schedule, or just a list of movies that had come out or were coming out soon that we had to do on the show, and I noticed that I recognised everything on the list, but there was one that said Horoscope, and I went, oh, what's that? I don't remember that one. And then it clicked out a while after that it was actually the same movie as Tarot, and they changed the name, but I had it written down as both Tarot and Horoscope in the list. So I guess I'm glad that's two things crossed off the list. That's sure. A pleasant surprise. So yeah, what is the premise of this? Basically, a group of college-aged friends are renting like a small mansion, which is like an Airbnb, for the weekend, as you do. And when they go snooping around in the basement, there's a lot of artifacts and things, including a very, very sort of antique set of tarot cards. And it just so happens that one of the girls, the main one, I suppose you could say, is able to do tarot readings, and she does so for everyone. But this is a cursed tarot deck, so they all start dying one by one in ways that their horoscopes kind of suggested they might. Like, it's all sort of, I mean, it's kind of mixing words a little bit, but it's like, hey, that thing she said kind of applies to how they died. That's the premise of the movie. We'll get into anything else in spoilers. So, Tim,
Yeah.
did you have a good time watching Taro?
Oh God. I don't know if you're gonna get mad at me, but
Oh no!
I'm not gonna say this is a good movie.
Oh no! What are you saying? No! This is a bet. This is a bet. You're not being serious. You're lying to me right now.
I had a little bit of fun with this movie.
No, Tim. What? No.
Listen, there's a lot of things they do wrong with it, but I think it actually does have a pretty solid premise. I think it's very fun. It's almost like Final Destination-y in a way where like half of the fun is trying to figure out like, okay, how is that prediction gonna come to light with this, and then a lot of times they end up really like fudging stuff, and the end just ends up being like something jumping out at you. That stuff I didn't enjoy, but I don't know, there was some dumb cheesy stuff that kind of made me laugh, and I liked the idea of like these freaks like these like card guys coming to life, and like I kind of wish like there was more that was just like, oh yeah, just like this army of like freaks from the cards that are coming to get you. And I don't know, it's dumb, but I did have more fun with this than I did a lot of the like bad generic like mainstream Hollywood movies that come out. I think the biggest thing is I'm assuming this was PG-13, because it feels like they always cut away with like whenever a kill scene or something is about to happen. There's some like backstory nonsense that is very dumb, but again, like I don't know, a lot of stuff that's so ludicrous it kind of made me laugh. So yeah, I don't know, I'm not saying it's a good movie by any means, but I do think I enjoyed this more than a lot of like the dumb bad generic stuff that we watch.
I hated this. Hated it. I mean, the comparison to being kind of Final Destination, I like kind of is right. But yes, as a Final Destination gave you a list of what will happen to every character in the first 10 minutes, and then you just have to sit there and wait for like the obvious boring things to happen. It's shot super generic. The characters, they're not even like overly annoying. They're just so nothing.
There's one character that's very annoying.
Okay, there's one character that's annoying, but they're by and large just so bland and like just nothing that like I can't even hate them. They're just bleh. And oh my god, like this movie, the one moment of joy I got out of this movie was how hard I laughed with how deep they do every single cliche about the research that these movies have, where not only does someone look something up on a computer and like the entire group like circles around and reads it together, and then that leads to them finding an expert they go and speak to who happens to know all the backstory, which leads to some really really shitty and cliched flashbacks of the backstory playing out hundreds of years ago. This was everything I hate about mainstream horror. There is like, could the concept be done well? Sure, right? Characters finding some sort of artifact or thing that unleashes an evil. Lots of good horror movies with that premise, right? Characters dying one by one in mysterious ways. Yes, Final Destination does work. Other movies have worked. But this movie, like, the first couple deaths, I'm like, okay, it's kind of like Final Destination, but with some sort of ghostly figure. That's fine, I guess. They're not. I don't really like how it's shot, but I thought, oh, both these murders sort of like, nothing really supernatural happens. It's almost like the spirit or the evil force forces them to die in a way in the environment, right? So it's like things that are there in the real world kill them. But then, all of a sudden, the very next death, now things are magically appearing out of nowhere and just happening for no reason. In fact, by the time we get to the end, a character just walks into a magical place that wasn't there. I'm like, what are the rules to this? Is it somewhat? Are the ghosts just nudging into something happening like the first couple seem to be, or is it just, oh, there's no rules to this? There's no nothing. It can just do whatever it wants at any time. So there's no reason to give a shit or care or believe the characters have any hope of fighting back. And then the way they actually do try and fight back is the most obvious solution that anyone could have guessed, that anyone would have ever have come up with. I hated this. What are you talking about? It was kind of fun. Did you hit your head, Tim?
I don't know, man. Obviously it's very dumb, but I don't know, just turn your brain off and just watch with some friends.
Don't give me the turn your brain off. Like, it's not as bad as some other similar movies, but this was a crappy Screen Gems supernatural horror movie with all of the tropes and filmmaking that I expect of this. And by the way, I looked up, so there's two directors for this, right? There's co-directors and co-writers, and obviously I assume the third name is who the book, because it's based on a book, by the way. But I looked up the co-directors, right? That's Spenser, Cohen, and Anna Halberg. Now, I don't know if they've directed much before, right? But they've written some things. Do you want to know what they've written? Do you know what two things stick out in my to me when I look at their credits?
Jumanji.
They co-wrote Moonfall.
Okay.
And
oh wait, did I see that?
That's excellent. Excellent sign if the movie was good or not. And then
that's the who's this? Was that a Michael Bay movie?
Roland Emmerich. It was.
Roland Emmerich. Oh, okay.
Yes, the one where the moon fell. Yes.
Okay, I forget if I've seen that or not. All right. Go on.
And the other notable here is Expendables 4.
Yeah, I've never seen any of those.
Yeah, well, I've seen both of these films, and Moonfall's terrible, and Expendables 4 is absolutely diabolically bad. It's like absolute trash. So I'll just say it. I think this directing duo they're bad writers at the very least, and I don't think much of the direction based on this movie. Yeah, I gotta say, like, it's lots of quick cuts. It's like Ghost jumps out and a loud noise happens when they jump out. It's like bad CG faces screaming at people. It's everything I don't like about modern supernatural horror movies, Tim. I don't think there's anything to like in this.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it had some interesting ideas, and then I don't know, the stuff that was bad was just so absurdly bad that it made me laugh. So I don't know. Again, I watched it with my wife, and we were kind of having fun and joking about it and stuff. So I don't know. I just had more of a fun time with it than I did with some of these other types of movies that I don't know, seem to get under my skin more. I do feel like it really wanted to be like Insidious. Like some of the shots when they were like cutting to, like you mentioned one where a person just goes to this like completely like other place that's not there. I was like, oh, this feels very much like something they would come across in the Further, and then even to the point where they have like the older expert lady that like comes in. I don't know. I thought it was kind of like a good bad movie that's fun to watch. Maybe it might be a little better to watch with like friends and kind of joke about and stuff, but I do agree, like the worst part is that there's a lot of like quick jumps to like CGI faces or whatever, because again, I like the idea of like each card has like this weirdo on it and they're gonna come and get you, because then it's like, oh, okay, we have like a movie with multiple monsters that are gonna come out, and you see very little of them. So I wish there was more of actually seeing them, and then more of the actual kill, because there's so much that just cuts away, which again, maybe it need to be R or something to be gorier. But I don't know. What can I say? I didn't hate it. I also had super low expectations going in. So, I mean, I think that at least worked in my favor, but not yours.
I mean, I cannot say I had any fun with this. I had to watch it in 3 chunks because I was so painfully bored out of my mind that paying attention became a chore after a while. So I had to like take a break, go and do something else, come back to it, watch another half hour. I thought it was real rough. I thought there's very little merit here. It's either just nothing but cliche after cliche, and it does switch what movies it's kind of riffing on at any given point without any real rhyme or reason. Some of like, I guess, I don't really have a problem with the core ideas, but the filmmaking to me is so painfully generic in like that sort of glossy Hollywood way where it's all the exact same sort of quick cuts, like all the moments. There's so many moments in this where you're like, well, this is about to happen because this is what happens in this scene in horror movies, and then that exact thing happens. You know, I would argue there's not an original bone in this entire thing, and not that horror movies have to be super original by any means to be good, but like, I don't know, like the pacing of when something's like, if I was having fun with like maybe, oh, so the entity from the tarot card is hunting down a character. If that scene was entertaining, if it was fun because it was like tense or it was built up and there was a good pace to it or something like that, that would be something. But it's not. It's you know, it's the flashy cuts, it's the CG, it's all the things I don't like. I don't think gore would save it. I mean, I would enjoy some good gore, but like, I don't think I'd trust these people to give me good gore even if that was an option. So yeah, I am gobsmacked at this reaction from Tim. So I'll just say, if he argues for this in the top 10 at the end of the year, I'm going to smack him. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I'm not trying to say this is a good movie by any means. All I'm trying to say is that I had fun with it. And I think, you know, if you're the one kind of person that likes dumb movies that you can make fun of with your friends, I think this is a better movie for that kind of thing than most other generic horror movies, which, I mean, one thing that I definitely feel different on is, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was never bored by it. You know, it's only about 90-ish minutes, and I don't know, maybe I just was getting excited to see more freaks, or like was interested to see like how the next person's gonna die, or whatever, or how the, you know, fortune is gonna come true. So at the very least, I can say I wasn't bored by it.
The bar's low, ladies and gentlemen. The bar is low. I mean, I don't have much to before. I mean, it's basically just time for spoilers. I don't think there's much to even elaborate on before then. I will say that, you know, like I don't think I learned any character names as I was watching.
Well, you
this.
gotta remember Paxton.
No, I don't. I'm looking over though. That's Ned from Spider-Man. Yes.
Right. Yeah. He was obviously like the character the movie loved the most. I feel like people kept saying like, Paxton, come on. Like they really want you to remember his name.
They thought he was going to be a crowd favorite. I thought he was pretty annoying. So.
Oh no, he's incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
I want to say Haley was the main girl.
Yeah, that sounds right. Honestly, I don't want to spoil who dies first, but I will say that there was two girls that I found it hard to tell apart. So I was glad that one of them died first, just so I wasn't confused anymore.
Okay.
Right. See, the rest of them have got this advantage where they're actually all different races, so they're really easy to tell apart. Sure. But there was two kind of light gingers that were tough to tell apart, and I was very pleased once one of them went away. Right.
Fair enough.
Bunch of generic pretty people. I mean, that's not entirely true, but there is one guy who is just like the most generic white looking dude that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and which is fine, but like that's just all he was to me.
The generic white people need movie roles too.
I think they've had their fair share. Oh dear. I don't know, I think there's this weird thing. Maybe it bothers me more now that I'm older, but something about young people in movies, I feel like they get presented as all these like perfect people nowadays, where
of course
I feel like back in the day there'd be some ugly people. There'd be some, you know.
Well, I think in general, and I might have talked about this before, but that's one thing I do like. Like I feel like we miss like the kind of character actors now that maybe aren't like traditionally good looking or whatever, but I feel like they're, you know, when you go back and watch like older movies, especially stuff like, you know, I feel like from the, you know, 70s or, you know, something like that, like it's just like more people with interesting features and stuff. And then, yeah, whenever you see movies with like a younger cast, it always just looks like very prototypical, like hunks and babes. And I don't know, it's it does get boring. Like I would almost appreciate it more if they were all just ridiculously attractive. Like they're just clearly all like posing like supermodels, because at least that'd be kind of funny. But sure, it's in this kind of weird ground where like no, this is all the people that are in the catalog for the clothes that we want people who are 18 to 22 to buy. You know. Oh yeah. This is your cast of your CW show. Well, I don't know if you can say that anymore because CW have decided not to make shows anymore. But once upon a time, that was a thing. Oh, poor CW.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, okay, and I realize we're saying this. Yes, Jacob Batalon, who's Paxton, who was Ned in the Spider-Man movies. Yeah, he's 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 not like a slim like model looking dude, but he's the annoying one. So I guess like the only unconventional like attractive person has to be the annoying guy who never shuts up.
Nothing. I thought you would have related to him because he loves podcasts.
He's also a Taurus. I didn't notice that, because one of the things they said about a Taurus, I'm like, oh, that does sound like me a little bit, actually. Only one part of it though, but yeah. There's a moment in this episode where like someone basically does a little jump scare, and he turns around and is mad and says, "You know, we were listening to a podcast." And I'm like, no one has ever said that.
What's so funny is I was like thinking, I was like, oh, we should clip this audio and just like have it as part of our like opening theme, just like forever.
No, I mean, I think the movie you described that is fun, stupid, even though no matter how bad it is, I think that's more of a wish upon to me out of these modern supernatural. And I realize that's like 7 years old at this point, but this to me was just like, I don't know. I thought this was worse than the Boogeyman.
I really didn't like the Boogeyman. I forgot. Was that this year?
That was last year, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
For some reason, when you were on paternity leave, you went to see one movie in theaters that we did in that time, and for some reason that was the Boogeyman. I guess you got a babysitter for that week.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Stephen King movie, and it was the the guy from Host, who I liked his stuff, so yeah. And I had the opportunity and I seized it.
Yes, I definitely felt seized.
Gonna try to seize some opportunities this week. I'll tell you that much.
What does that mean? I'm
gonna try to go see Alien, the new Alien movie.
Oh, okay. Yes. You're dating the episode, Tim. That's weeks away, or that was weeks ago.
Who cares? It is a shame though, because you'll do it on Ace instead of this show, but I feel like it's looking like it might be a little bit horror-y.
I mean, so is Alien, but I did Alien on Ace.
No, well, I should have been on this show.
Look, it's both horror and sci-fi, and let's face it, there's a lot more horror movies for us to do, so we've got plenty to keep ourselves preoccupied with.
Well, I mean, I don't mind not reviewing it on the show. It's just a shame that we can't then have it as part of the top 10 at the end of the year.
Oh, is that a rule? Are we not allowed to do that?
I don't know. I assumed it was.
I don't know. If I feel it's enough of a horror movie and I happen to like it, which I hope I do, then I would make an argument for it. But we'll cross that bridge if it's good. I mean, because we don't know yet. We hope, but we don't know.
It's so weird. I feel like I keep hearing people that are, I mean, and I guess it's weird now to be talking about this like weeks after it's come out, but I do feel like there are a lot of people that are like, I don't know, like we'll wait and see. Like for me, like there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to be good, because it's just, Fede Alvarez just has a great track record. I mean, it's not like he's made like a million movies, but everything he's made has been such a banger, and the trailer looks great and everything sounds great. So I just can't in my mind imagine it not at least being pretty good.
I mean, I suspect it'll at least be decent just because of what you just said. I think there's a chance though that it might feel like a very safe nostalgia movie.
That's fair.
That's rehashing just kind of the main beats of Alien, which would be better than the last couple of Alien movies we got. But that wouldn't be special. It wouldn't be great if that's all it is.
Sure. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
All I'm saying. So, all right. I mean, even Tim, who likes this movie apparently, is so interested in talking about it. He'd much rather talk about Alien Romulus coming out this week / 2 weeks ago, depending on your perspective. From our perspective, it's this weekend. From your perspective, it was weeks ago. So, yeah. I guess spoilers for Taro. Not that you should care, because it's terrible. It's fine. You can just hear all the spoilers.
It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's literally what I just said.
I didn't sound like you said that. It sounded like you just said terrible, but you paused a little bit after.
Terrible.
Okay. Terrible.
Should have been the tagline.
I don't think they want to imply the movie's bad. That's like, part one of marketing is you at least pretend the movie is going to be good.
I think if a movie is so bad, like, they should embrace it. Let's be like, hey, come see the bad movie.
Sure. Obviously, there's a few movies that would maybe work for. But, yeah.
I feel like there's either a new or recent movie that people were like, oh man, it's a train wreck. And people are like, oh, I want to see it then.
Are you thinking of Borderlands?
Maybe that was it. I forgot about that movie though. Oof, that does not look good.
Yeah, I will say, Tim, not that I'm inviting you, but
it's gonna be extra reels.
Extra reels, not anytime too soon. I'm not gonna see it in theaters, but down the line.
If it comes out on Netflix or something, and I don't have to pay for it, maybe I'll be a little enticed.
I'm just saying,
can't do it in October though.
No.
We got a lot of stuff to do for October.
It's later than October. Don't worry. It's
okay.
I don't want to reveal too much, but it's just
December.
It's been on. It's Christmas on the it's on the schedule for a slot. Yeah, it's actually funny on Extra Reels. I was thinking recently, we need to do Uwe Boll on Extra Reels at some point, and I was like, but some of them are horror, and we've already done a couple of the horror ones, so I'm like, they won't get done on Extra Reels. So David's safe from Alone in the Dark and House of the Dead.
I have fun with like Blubberella or whatever.
Well, I think we did Blood Rain as well, but but unfortunately that leaves things like Postal and In the Name of the King and whatever else he's done, which rough times.
Careful what you say, because he might challenge you to a fight if you're not very kind.
I won't accept the fight. I'll say, no, sir, I'm not fighting an ex-boxer. I'm not an idiot. Anyway, all right, we need to talk about this stupid movie. So Taro opens up with our characters around the fireplace, or campfire, I should say. And
thank you.
They're talking about them spending the weekend here, whatever. It establishes that the main girl, Haley, and the main guy, Grant, were a couple, but they split up right before this trip. So that's our
the drama.
Yeah, I was going to say like unrequited love, but it's not unrequited if they were together and broke up. It's just our star-crossed? Not a star-crossed. I don't know. It's two lovers who are obviously going to love each other again by the end because they go through a lot of shit, right? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. But yeah, honestly, like, obviously this should be a solid introduction of like character building, and in theory, I can see a good version of this scene that works. I just find all these characters to be, I don't know, just nothing. They're playing a game where they're saying, oh, who's the most likely to whatever, and like they'll say, oh, who's the most likely to get married first, and they'll all point at who they think that is. And it almost feels like a really kind of like cynical way where the writer's like, how can we like get the characters across really quickly? Oh, we'll have them play a game where they actually point out to each other who each other are like, oh, this is the guy who eats stuff off the floor. Thought that'd be more of a running joke or something, but that didn't really come up that much. He ate one potato chip off the floor, Tim. In the next scene, that was it.
That's all right.
But ultimately, it's all about them just sort of like the entire motivation for why they find the tarot deck is that they've run out of booze, and that is so horrific to them. Then they're in the middle of nowhere, so they can't just go and get stuff. So they're like, oh, I wonder if there's booze in this Airbnb. So they just go storming through the house. They break into the basement, which has got a lock on it, and it says "keep out." So yeah, good luck with your review on that. But they find a bunch of spooky shit, including the tarot deck, and our main girl, Haley, just happens to be someone who's learned how to do that. So they think this will be fun. And after they do it, which we'll go back and talk about like the actual tarot reading, but when they're done, one of the girls is like, oh, that was way more fun than playing some other game. And I'm like, what was fun about it? You just sat and had like your friend tell you that you're insecure or something, and like I don't know, it was like in what way is any of this fun? I don't get it, but
honestly, I would have had fun with it. that does sound like something that's kind of cool to me. I've always wanted to get like, you know, my future told or my palms read or something. Like, I don't know. I think it's interesting. Yeah, and then you can kind of like see like, okay, let's see if this, you know, comes true.
Do you know what I think my problem is that as I was watching this scene and she's saying things like, oh, you're going to feel trapped in a confined space, and you know, you're going to have to overcome a fear or something, but and she's like says something for each person, and like, you know, as she's saying it, like everything she's saying is just going to happen later. It's like giving you a list of things to expect, and I found that really unexciting.
I mean, I disagree. I think the fun is seeing like, okay, how is this going to come true? Because it's like, okay, yeah, obviously I know that, you know, these fortunes are going to come to light in some way, but you don't know exactly how. So I don't know. I disagree with you there. I think that's actually a pretty fun premise for a horror movie.
Well, I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying like, but it's just so blatant, and like the like, what she says isn't exciting or is like something that's going to be twisted that much. Just, you know, one of them's like, oh, you'll, you know, be wary of machines, they'll break down on you and then you'll be in the water. Like, okay, so she's going to fall in some water. All right, I guess we like, I don't know.
No, I disagree, because they're more like using like turns of phrase, like, so they'll be like, oh, like it'll be, you know, like a bridge over troubled water or something like that, or you're climbing the ladder to success. But I mean, it's stuff that, you know, obviously later is gonna come to pass and be taken literally, but in that moment it's not like stuff that they're like, oh, like that is actually what's gonna happen. So I don't know, I didn't have a problem with it. I think the one thing I do think is kind of funny though is that it's like, okay, there's like a decent amount of characters, and like the fortunes are like always kind of long, so it's like, yes, I do think the fun is kind of imagining how it's going to come to play, but also there's no way I can remember all of this. So they do have to end up doing like voiceover and stuff later to remind you.
They repeat it, like they once they realize stuff is happening, they start like talking and saying them again out loud. This is what you said about me, this is what you said about me, and then later one of them happened to film it, so they start just all watching the video of like what she said, and then stuff starts happening. I'm like, oh my god, like I get it, like you're just reminding everyone. And but the problem is though is that they can really forget one or two things, like so there's a whole thing where when Ned, what's his name, Paxton, right, when Paxton gets his reading, one of the things she says is that you'll help out your friends, you'll be there for your friends in an unexpected way. But conveniently later on, when they're saying all the other things that she said to him, they forget that part. So I thought, like, okay, he's going to show up and save them later on. I know he's not dead, even though you've tried to pretend to me that he is dead. Like, I just know that he's not. You spelled this out, movie. And what's more is the characters are being annoyingly dumb for forgetting that part conveniently.
Yeah, I mean, I guess don't want to skip right to the end, but that ending is so egregious. Like, again, it made me laugh that I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe they're actually doing this and trying to get away with it.
Well, I think for me, the biggest part that I hated about this running thing that I'm talking about is the scene where he decides that he doesn't want to go with the rest of them, and he's just going to like hole up on his own, and they're all trying to talk him out of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is why it'll be unexpected when he helps them later, because he's leaving them all, so he can swoop in. I'm like, that's so obvious here, but none of the characters for a second think, oh, he's going to come back and help because it said he'd help in an unexpected way. I'm like, how are you all this stupid? How are you? I was frustrated, Tim. I was frustrated.
And also, to be fair though, he doesn't really help them that much. Like, it's not like he helps in
he gives them
defeating.
A lift. Yeah, I thought he was going to show up and save their life. He just kind of shows up, and so they don't have to walk the rest of the way back to town. Which, for the record as well, like, whose car is he in? And that wouldn't be a question I would ask, except for the fact that they don't recognize the car. It's not until he stops and then they can kind of see in the window, oh, wait a minute, it's him. And he has this big heroic entrance. They're basically, do you know what they're doing? They're doing the moment from the end of Get Out when the airport cop car comes up. But that makes sense because it's a cop car and it's meant to build this tension that maybe it's a cop and that may be a bad thing for this black character given the themes of the movie. But then it turns out to be his friend. They basically do that here, but it's just like a random car. So I'm like, wait, did he borrow some other friend's car? Because this movie's told me they only have this one group of friends. I don't believe for a second that any of these characters know anyone else. Oh, okay.
Well, he does mention his roommate Todd a few times.
Oh, Todd. Todd.
Very could easily be his.
Todd, who we never see. We get like a scene where it's implied that he's just off camera, but we never actually see Todd, if that's even his name.
So wait, now I was a little confused. Are you supposed to try to follow your reading, or are you supposed to like work against it to? Because like later on they're trying to like, I don't know, try to find like ways to combat it, and I couldn't really understand if they were saying like, oh no, don't do what the reading says so that it doesn't come true, or if it's like, oh no, like follow it so because that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, this to me lines up with the other thing I was complaining about earlier, where the rules for the deaths themselves seem to just kind of change. Where, okay, the idea that the characters from the tarot cards, which you kept calling weirdos, I'm like, Tim, I'm pretty sure on a set of tarot cards it's always the same characters that are on the cards. Like, it's always death, the magician, so on, you know.
Right, but like the way they're drawn, like I feel like they're not, you know, like they're purposely drawn to look like crazy.
Sure,
you know,
they're more
like things
demented than normal.
Yeah. Like I feel like most decks you wouldn't, every time you look at something you're not supposed to be like, oh, that's like a freaky thing that could kill me.
Just, you know, like it's become a very strong statement to call someone weird in the last few weeks, Tim. And I just
that's true.
I just want to, you know, like maybe that should be reserved for people on a certain political spectrum.
I'm gonna get kicked off the podcast for using quote unquote hate speech, calling people weird.
Hate speech. No, but I think that the death, like, it's okay. So it's like, okay, the murders are like, Ghost pops up in a really uncreative way. But, you know, the first death when we get to it, it's like, okay, it's an attic and a ladder, and it's the ladder that does the killing. The ghost uses the ladder, but it's the ladder that's there in the scene. The second scene, it's like, okay, character sort of scared onto a train track, which, by the way, his tarot reading was like, oh, you'll be on the wrong track, or something like that, right? And he gets hit by the train, fine. Which also is very Final Destination, actually. It's like the bus scene from that movie. So, okay, in fact, even the ladder is very Final Destination, actually. That's from 2.
That's right,
about it. But it's like, okay, I don't think these have been well executed. I think they're both bad scenes and they're bad versions of things that are in other movies. But at least I thought there was like a through line to the logic of it. But then, of course, the very next time we get a death scene, a magic noose just appears on a bridge out of nowhere. And it doesn't follow the logic
like
of the previous murders. Yeah. It's just like, oh, just murder weapons will just appear now in front of people and it'll be nothing. Right? I think what you're getting at kind of falls into my same problem with this, is just how inconsistent it is. And I do agree. I'm like, well, the only reason why Ned was able to show up and help them is because he followed the rule of his thing. So, like, they put in like a little, I can't even call it a mid-credit scene. It's a right after the title scene because they knew no one would care enough to actually wait around for a mid-credit scene. But they have to explain at the end why he's not dead. So it just sort of was like, it's like, wait a minute, how did you survive? And he just tells this bullshit story, and I'm like, wait, did that actually stop the death, or was he always destined? Because he wouldn't have shown up and helped like the tarot said he would, had he been killed there. So he wasn't done with all the things he was supposed to do in the tarot reading, and that leads to the other problem I had is that. So here's a question I have for you, Tim.
Okay.
Were the murders supposed to be the thing that was said in the tarot reading, or the thing that's in the tarot image itself? Because I felt like they were going back and forward on this a little bit in terms of like what the kills actually were. Because at first it felt like they were always what was said, what she said when she was given them the reading. You'll be on the wrong tracks. He's on the wrong tracks, hit by the train. But as the movie progressed, I'm like, okay, yes, that one girl did technically go off a bridge into water, but she was hanged. That's how she actually died. That's what's on the card. So, which is it? Make your mind up, movie.
I mean, there's very inconsistent logic, or maybe even no logic at all to the movie. But I mean, again, it seems like it made you more angry. While to me, I was laughing at how like brazen they were, just seem to not care to have like a logical progressive storyline. Yeah, no, it's strange because it does start with like, okay, you have this reading, and then it starts to play out like a twisted version where, okay, what's happening in the reading is killing you, but then like it always will end like with a ghost jumping out at you. Then it's like, okay,
Yes.
well, that's not like, you know,
Which is just,
like,
and then, yeah, by the time we get to the final like pair of characters and they're trying to like stop everything, there's just a ghost chasing them around the house. Like that's all it becomes at the end. So I just like pick a goddamn rule and stick to it, and I'd at least respect you for it, and it might be good because at least then I could understand what the do's and don'ts are or whatever.
I don't know. I think it kept me on my toes because it kept like being different.
Like the problem with Paxton surviving his, right, because his thing said he'd be boxed in and there'd be numbers descending or whatever, and that correlates to the elevator because he's boxed in and he's going down the floors and the ghost is coming for him. Fine, whatever. But he doesn't actually do anything to alter or interrupt it. And like I said, he wouldn't do the part where he shows up unexpectedly to help the others if he didn't survive it. So I'm like, why is his the one that needs to keep going? It's almost like the tarot reading included the fact that they're going to survive, but if that's the case, then why did the others die? Like, there's just no real internal logic to me that makes this work in any other way other than the movie script says it happens here, so just go with it.
I mean, like, honestly, I'm guessing they thought that he was going to be such a breakout character that, like, well, we can't, like, audiences love him, and if we do a sequel, like, we can't have it without Paxton, so he has to survive. Yeah, because it seems like he just gets so much more focus and character than anyone else in the movie, and also, like, I mean, I didn't really recognize anyone else in here. Like, he was the only person like that I was like, oh, okay, like I obviously recognize him from the Spider movies. Notably,
you recognize him from other Sony movies because he's in the Spider-Man movies. So it's like
right, yeah.
It's just like Tom Holland being in Uncharted, another Sony movie. It's like, hey, they're our boys. We're going to put them in things. Whereas Zendaya's actually a big star and goes and does movies all over the place.
Yeah, but so yeah, it feels like, okay, yeah, they just want him to survive, but it is bullshit because like every other time during the movie, it's like it seems like these creatures can do whatever they want. Like you said, yeah, one just hangs a girl because it's like that's what he wants to do. So if he really wanted to kill Paxton, I don't think his roommate coming out and being like, hey, what's going on, would have stopped him.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, even that hanging scene, because that scene starts with them in the car and like they're hearing the playback of what the predictions were, and it mentions the technology stopping randomly, and just as that says, the car starts slowing down, it just stops working, and they're like, shit. And it's really frustrating. The characters are dumb. You know, the girl who is the one in question, who this is like her, you know, her reading that's coming true. She, you know, it said that she would run and she'd be on a bridge, and she gets out the car and runs anyway because she's scared. I'm like, okay, first of all, you're just playing into what the prediction was, so that's dumb for a start. But as she's running away and the others are still in the car before they try and get out to go and run after her, the ghost like torments them in the car for some reason, and there's a whole bit where it's like the like I don't know, like the sensor, which it's like for the collision detection, starts going off around the car on the little like LCD display. This is one of these fancy new car things that I've never been in a car that has it, but I got it from context. This is what it's for. Is that it's for collisions, is to say, hey, this part of the car's just bumped something, so some supernatural force is bumping around the car, and I'm like, but why? Like, is it just to stop them from going to help the other girl because it's her time?
Oh, maybe.
But if that's the, I don't know. I'm like, it's again, it seems like they can just do whatever they want, which is why it really bugged me towards the end when the death like tarot ghost is walking around looking for the main girl and she hides in a closet. I'm like, it's a supernatural force. It's not a serial killer who has to find you and you can hide from. Like,
yeah.
Why doesn't he know you're here? That's stupid.
No, I agree, and I I was laughing at that. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it sounds like the only difference between us is I just didn't think it was funny, which is fair enough. I like some dumb bad movies because they make me laugh, but this did not make me laugh at all.
Yeah, it's just again, it's just one of those instances where everything is so ludicrous and it's making like the worst choice possible. That I found it entertaining for that.
Okay, well, so to go
again,
back,
I never said it was a good movie. I never tried to say that.
Yeah, that is fair. You're still certifiable, but that's fair. To go back in the timeline a little bit, they have their night, they leave the place, and they go back, and we find out like some of them live in dorm rooms, whatever, blah blah blah. First girl dies, the ladder death that we mentioned. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, I don't remember if they said where this takes place, but I want to say it was Boston.
They mentioned where the mansion in the woods was, so if you know the location, you could probably guess based on that. But I mean, I don't.
I feel like when he was in the subway, I thought it said like Boston line or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
But the only reason why I bring that up because it's like I've been to Boston. It's a very busy city. If this was supposed to be Boston, there's a lot of instances where they're just walking around and there's no one there.
Yeah.
Like even if it's late at night, like on that bridge, even late at night, there'd be a couple of cars that would pass by.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least they're driving from somewhere else, so I don't think they're maybe back in the city yet. So at least maybe that gives you that excuse. But I mean, I'm just devil's advocate for the sake of it, really. So girl dies. Next day, they all find out about this tragic accident, and they're all depressed, naturally. But of course, as they're all comforting each other, and obviously they don't think anything weird's happening yet, they think it's just an accident. That night, the second character dies, who's the guy Lucas who dies in the train tracks, and like to try and make us care about him, they try and set up a thing where he and like the girl, was her name Madeline, the Latino girl, or Latina girl. Sorry, I said Latino. Not I should have just said Hispanic. It'd have been easier. But they have like maybe a thing, like they have an attraction. Like they all sort of joke, "Oh, we all know you're into each other," but they don't do anything. And he walks her home, and she's like, "Oh, thanks for being here," and she hugs him, and that's it. And it's like, "Hey, I'll be awake if you need anything. Just call me." And it's kind of like, oh, maybe she'll ask him in, but she doesn't because they're not quite there yet. That's all you get to maybe care about this guy, is that, you know, maybe there's like a relationship brewing there. But he's in the subway. It does that, again, super cliche generic thing where the lights just start going out and coming towards him, like the darkness is coming for him down these big white tunnels. But eventually he runs into an off-limits area where some trains are just being stored, and the ghost just keeps jumping out at him until it pushes him onto the track and he gets hit. But anyway, I'll just rush through those because we kind of already talked about those deaths. I wanted to just sort of get them out of the way because obviously after two of their friends die in back-to-back days, it does raise some questions where they're like, this is weird. Why are two of our friends dead? Also, we're all very depressed now. It's very dour. And there's a scene where they're talking to two police officers and they're like asking them questions and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I kind of get that they might go to the police because, hey, we think there's something suspicious about this because two of our friends have died. But I also feel like, would the police look at these two incidents and actually think there's a pattern of any kind? Like, I mean, maybe they would. I don't know. But like, it felt like a weird scene to me where I don't know if... Because the police flat out say, look, there's no evidence of any foul play, even though... I'm going to just point out the girl who died with the ladder getting rammed into her. It wasn't like the ladder just landed on her once. The ladder, like the ghost picked up the ladder and like rammed it in like 3 or 4 times. So how does that not look like foul play?
Well, I mean, like, how in any instance would a ladder just fall on you?
Well, if it was like Final Destination 2, maybe it would. I mean...
Well, right, but like, yeah, in this case, it's like, all right, yeah, why would she even... I'm assuming, you know, people very seldom go in there, and then...
Oh, yeah, which, by the way, for her death scene, they explain that everyone in the dorm's at a birthday party, and that's why there's no one else around to witness or hear or see any of this.
Yeah. Also, one quick thing I do want to bring up is when they're driving back from the house in the opening scene, and we already mentioned.
Do you want to talk about the true crime podcast?
Yeah, just first of all, I just think it was actually very funny that, like, you know, you're with your friends and you're driving back, and you know, your one friend has the control of the music, and the thing he puts on is like a podcast. Like, that is I do feel like that's a weird thing to put on with, unless like, you're all friends of like this one podcast and you all want to hear the latest episode or something. I feel like, when you're driving with your friends, you want to like shoot the shit and like, have fun, and like you just put on some music in the background while you talk or do whatever. So I think it's funny that
no one wants to talk to Paxton, Tim. Come on.
Right. But yeah, and then when they are listening to the podcast, it does feel like the most like cliche, like, and then the murderer's knife was in the wife's hand or something. And it's like, but
they almost do like an actual proper little payoff here, but they kind of gloss over it, so it doesn't really have the effect it should. Because when he puts on the podcast, everyone in the car, because they're split in two cars because there's too many of them, all the characters in the car with him all don't want to listen to it. And I felt like they were going for a thing where by the end of the trip, they're all going to be invested and want to know what happens next. And they kind of like imply that a little bit, because when they stop to get some fuel, the driver, who is the main guy, Grant, who's the guy who was with Haley but aren't anymore, whatever, right? They're all very generic characters, so there's not a lot to describe them by. But like that's when he kind of like taps in the window and like scares them, because like all the other characters in the car are all like leaning forward, listening to the story, and like they're all into it. And I thought they were going for a thing here where they were going to say, "Hey, like we want to know what happened now," and it'd be like a little payoff or something. But I don't know, they just kind of like steamrolled past it, and all we really got was him saying that, "Hey, you knew we were listening to a podcast here."
Yeah, I do think that was the implication, that they did get into it, but yeah, they didn't really sell it that much.
Nah.
But again, I did think that was funny, and then like you said earlier, the line of like, "Hey, we're listening to a podcast here." Again, that just tickled my fancy, because obviously we do a podcast, so we know what it's like.
Oh god, I came back and obviously I sort of indicated to Tim to vamp for a few seconds while I was away, and the first thing I hear when I come back is, we do a podcast. Like, yeah, they know, Tim. I think they know we do a podcast. I think they're listening to it right now.
Hey, it's nice to see it represented in a major motion picture.
It's better in Twisters, because the podcasters turn out to be the heroes, so So
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I mean, not spoiler for Twisters, but the podcasters are the good ones.
They do a podcast about tornadoes.
Well, Storm Chasers, yeah, it's like a storm chasing podcast.
Okay.
I mean, like,
I said that there's an audience for everything.
There is. To be fair, it's a real thing. Like when tornadoes were like kicking off during the summer, like people were like, there was YouTubers, at least, if not podcasters, doing stuff. Yeah. Sorry, they weren't podcasters in the movie, they were YouTubers. But we were also
Even
YouTubers.
Worse. Ugh, don't remind me.
You're a YouTuber, Tim. Deal with it. Anyway, so obviously they're like, hey, 2 people died, this is weird. And Paxton, and this is why he likes true crime podcasts in the script, I guess, he's like, what if there were murders? And like 3 of them are like, I don't know, that's morbid. Like, obviously it's a really weird coincidence that 2 of them died, but that's a bit much. And then Paxton's like, and what if I'm looking at one of the killer right now? And like, that's sick. We're all recovering from the fact that 2 of our friends are dead, and you're like saying that one of us might be a serial killer. And he's like, yeah, but it's usually someone that the victim knows, and 2 of her friends are dead. Something might be happening here. Anyway, this conversation,
almost a little like Scream-esque.
Oh, it's very Scream. Yeah, I mean, it's just this conversation, but this conversation does feel a bit Scream. And Paxton feels like he's meant to be the Randy. It's just instead of movies, he loves true crime. Like that's the thing. But this conversation starts here, gets to the part where the main girl's like, wait a minute, they died just like the tarot reading, which then leads to, oh, can we figure out like who owned that house, or can we figure out more about tarot readings? Which leads us down the multi-tiered, layered version of the research part of the middle of the movie, which is first the computer research, which then leads to then finding this expert that lives out somewhere in the hope that she'll help them or have some answers. So we get this trek out to this woman who's an English woman who's like,
so like the way they find them is like they just Google basically like I don't know, tarot readers or something, and it's like the first website they find, like, hey, this lady looks like she might know something.
And she lives within a couple of hours driving distance. America's a pretty big place, and she's not even American, which is especially lucky. The woman who has direct intel on this happens to live close by.
Well, to be fair, she seems to be on the trail of these tarot cards.
True.
So.
She's looking for them, so that's why she's in the vicinity. She's narrowed it down to the state. Yeah,
it seems like it's her life mission to destroy the cards, but even when she gets a group of kids that come and tell her that they just were near the cards, she doesn't really seem too interested in finding them.
She doesn't ask, what the location is or where to go find them so she can destroy them.
I'm gonna come with you. Like
no, none of that. She shows up to help later because they ask her to, but she doesn't seem to actually be very proactive in this middle segment. Basically, she doesn't want you to talk to them, but they're like, no, like, our friends are dead, and we did. And she's like, so what happened? Did you read from tarot cards? And he's like, yes. Who did the reading? I did. Oh, show me the deck. Oh, I don't have them with us. They were at some house that we rented. Okay. But
she just instantly starts like, Texas, 1873. A group does a tarot reading. Like she just like goes on like this big like monologue about all the incidents of these like tarot cards, which actually only ends up being like 2 or 3 times.
Because I think it's like. Because I think the only date that was really far back was the actual origin story. I think the first one she said, like, there was like an incident that happened where like 6-7 people died. Was the 60s, then there was one in the 70s, and then there was one in 1988 in London, and that's the one I was in. I'm the only survivor. And the reason why she's a survivor is because she did the readings, but she didn't do one on herself, unlike our dumb main character. Which, okay, I shouldn't call her dumb. She doesn't know that she's cursing herself by doing a tarot reading on herself. I can't really say that. But because I
do say something at. Sorry,
there you go. Oh, no, okay, fine. Well, what I was going to say is at the start of the movie, when Grant says, "I don't want a tarot reading," I thought he wasn't going to get one, and that was going to be something they could use later, that he was immune to everything, and they would maybe play with that. But then at the end of the scene, he just says, "Do me now anyway." He just sort of changes his mind, which was annoying. But on you go.
Yeah. And then they do mention something about like, oh, like you're never supposed to use someone else's tarot deck to do a reading, which it seems like maybe that would be like the curse or something, but it doesn't seem like. That
seemed like it might have been an important detail, and then it turns out, no, it's just a cursed tarot deck. It didn't matter.
Yeah. Most of the time you'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's just this time.
So yeah, we get the extended flashback in like 1670.
Of the astrologer.
Yes, the astrologer. This woman who did readings.
Horror's newest baddie. What? You gotta admit, she's Horror's newest baddie. Admit it.
I can't admit that.
Say the astrologer is Horror's newest baddie.
No, F you, Tim. I'm not saying it.
I'm gonna get you to say it.
Oh, good luck. Good luck. You get a better chance of me saying Mr. Mixapetali backwards than you got me saying that. Honestly, they really wanted her to be the new nun.
Right, yeah.
Every time you see her, when she's like spooky, she's got that black veil on, so it's very nun-like, just without the white part. It's
it is funny. Like I guess I didn't pick up on like everything while watching it, but like what we're talking about, it's like, oh yeah, this really is like snippets of like so many other horror movies.
Yes, it's just aping on everything from the last decade or so. But yeah, this
it's a love letter to horror.
Extended cheesy period piece flashback of the astrologer did readings for this rich man. But unfortunately, the reading said that his wife was going to die along with his child during childbirth. And he didn't want that, so he demanded a new reading. But no matter what she did, the readings always said the same. But once it happened, and the wife and child died as expected, he wanted vengeance. So he killed the astrologer's daughter out of cold blood. So the astrologer cursed him and did his tarot reading with this cursed deck and did like a whole witchcraft thing and then killed herself. And that's why we've got all this. This is like 5 minutes of like shit. Like we have to sit through for all this backstory. I'm just summing it up as quickly as possible. So yeah.
Honestly, I didn't mind the backstory. I thought like I don't know, like it sounded like a good campfire legend to me.
I just think there's more interesting ways. Like I think I'd be far more excited about hearing fragments of it and like letting my mind fill some of it in than just.
There's a more interesting way to present it for sure. Yeah.
I think just showing it just as one of the tropes of these kind of sleek, like generic, like supernatural horror movies is that it's just like, no, everything must be seen, everything must be shown.
Yeah.
Which just takes away from whatever. So
they should have done it like on the cards. Like the story should have been like unfolded like you're looking at cards.
I just don't know if like there could have been a good movie that started with the same premise, but I must admit that I think inherently I have a bit of an attitude towards tarot cards. I just think they're a bit dumb, so I just like I'm never going to take the card part that seriously.
Well, you know who the worst person to do a tarot reading would be?
Go on.
My boy, Gambit.
That was a roller coaster because I thought you were saying my boy as in the boy.
I mean, obviously you wouldn't want a reading from the boy, but
I was like, how are you working Brahms into this? And then you said Gambit.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't want Remy LeBou, you know, charging up those cards. Hey, here's your fortune, mon ami.
Oh dear.
Well, you gotta admit that would be an unfortunate circumstance if Gambit was giving your reading, because he would charge up the cards.
True, but you'd have to touch them.
Well, he might fling them at you.
I mean, he might, but then why do you care about the bad tarot reading? He's just going to kill you with the cards. It's a much more imminent problem.
That's true.
Anyway, so yeah. So they basically just leave this woman.
I again, this was super weird to me because it's like, okay, she's telling you like, oh yeah, I've been trying to like hunt these cards down and blah blah, and
I mean, she does give them like, okay, your only hope is to destroy the cards. That makes stuff.
Right,
like she does give them that information, but it is strange that she doesn't like. She again, if she's been hunting these down since the 80s because she wants to figure out why it happened and stop it from happening again, then it's really strange. I actually thought they were setting up that she was actually a villain and she was just like she was just the astrologer in human form to like mess with them because of the way they presented her.
That would have been freaky.
And then I was very surprised when she shows up to help them and then just dies in the most awfully like CG way where she just pulled across to the fireplace.
In a like again, some of the deaths they try to work in like this, you know, interesting way that the fortune is going to affect it. This one, it was just like, oh, you're going to die by swords.
Well, that's the thing. That wasn't even the fortune. That was just what was in the card. This is back to what I was saying earlier. But some of them are like what the tarot reading says, and some of them is what the cards are. But you know, yeah. Anyway, which was, by the way, the only reason why she has her tarot even read is because the ghost of the astrologer does the reading. The cards start going out on their own, and that's her reading. Well, if the astrologer can just do tarot readings for anyone at once, then why isn't it just hunting down every human being on the planet?
Well, I think it's because she was trying to do like a seance with it.
She was trying to like bring her out to stop her or something. Yeah.
So what was so funny about this to me is she's like, I'm going to communicate with you know, the astrologer. So like, you know, she sets everything up, and then like 2 seconds later, like she's completely possessed and dying. She's like, oh shit.
Yeah, she dies. She's useless.
Yeah. And I was like, I turned to my wife. I was like, so what was her plan? Like, what was she like what was she gonna do? Like, because it seems like she is trying to do something, but we don't know what. Like, okay, you're gonna talk to her, but what is that gonna accomplish? What is that gonna achieve? And then she's just like instantly dead.
She's useless. She's a useless character. They're all useless characters.
Yeah. And like, she doesn't even like, I don't know, really give like a little bit of information or something that will help the other characters or whatever. So
yeah, and all this happens when they go to the house. The only thing so when they leave her place, that's when the hanging on the bridge happens, and then immediately Paxton is like, I'm not sticking with you guys, I'm going to go back to the dorm, and that's where his lift thing his elevator thing happens.
He does a Cartman. He goes, screw you guys, I'm going home.
yes, I guess he does. And like, you know,
Cartman from South Park.
I know who Cartman is. I'm just trying to move on with the plot, Tim. So right, and they do the thing a few times, but they definitely do it with him where, like, you know, the figure of the tarot character is in the background, but they always have to overdo it with a little music sting or whatever. They never just have him quietly being there to make it creepy, so it just never feels like it's that fun. But he has his whole elevator scene. The other characters go to the house, which, by the way,
guy that's coming after him is the fool. He's like this jester looking character.
Yeah. The one that came after the girl on the bridge just looked like an evil version of Gollum with sharp teeth. I don't know what that one that was meant to be.
Yeah, and I didn't remember, and I didn't really get a good look of it. Again, this is a big problem for me. Like, I would have had a lot more fun if, like, this was more of, like, you know, a creature attack movie where it's like, yeah, they're coming out of the cards and chasing them and stuff, like Neon Maniacs or something. Like, it's a bunch of these different, like, weirdo monster creatures that you're trying to run away from.
It would be interesting if any of them, other than the magician, which I'll admit the magician at least does a magician-themed death, every other one just acts the same way. They all just stalk the person and then they die. That's it. Like, the magician at least does like a magician thing where he puts them in a box and starts stabbing it with a saw and then saws it in half. Like, that's a fun idea at least. I do think the character who's like, I mean, we don't even mention Paige yet, but Paige is one of the other characters that's been there the whole time. She's the last one of the group to die, and this is the one where all of a sudden there's like a stage and like a crowd of people to like react to it. But she actually tries to hide in the magician's box, and I'm like, what are you doing? What do you think's going to happen when you go in there? He's going to know you're in there, and then he's going to start stabbing you with things, because that's what magicians do with these boxes. And would you believe it? It happens. And yes, nothing of value is lost.
This is what felt like very much Insidious to me. The way they kept cutting back to the audience, like, oh, that reminds me of like a scene you would see in The Further. Like, just he's kind of like, it even had this kind of like blue tint to it that felt like, what you see there.
Yeah, but no other like death or scene in the movie does this. It's just so on its own, and it's like, okay, just some consistent rules that I could understand would be good.
Well, maybe like each tarot character has their own power, and so like maybe the magician's power is that he can, because they say like, you know, beware his bag of tricks. So maybe he has these tricks where he can teleport you or make you see things or something. I don't know. Well,
yeah, but then I'd ask, what do any of the other ones have?
Well, one has hanging powers. They can make a rope come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The Fool doesn't really seem to do anything except for kind of just like change his face mask and like appear over there and then
I'm guessing the one that hanged the girl was the Hangman, but I mean, I'm not sure.
That makes sense, yeah.
I'm not sure what the Gollum looking character was supposed to be with sharp teeth for that.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You know, fair enough, whatever, I guess. Yeah, so
they're all like you know, the astrologer is like Madame Web, and like all the cards are like the Spider Women.
I'm just like, if you actually set up what each of the different characters that come from the cards were and what they could do, like what their abilities were, and then have the characters have to survive different types of attacks, that'd be interesting perhaps, but no, it's very undefined. It just, stuff just kind of happens. It's very inconsistent. But
they should update the tarot deck with like new characters. Like there should be like the podcaster.
Okay, right. I just want like, they try and burn the cards. It doesn't work. That's when the old woman shows up and says, "I'll do this seance." She dies like a chump. That's that. The other characters get the idea eventually after like the third character, the girl dies, Paige, where she has the magician death, which the characters kind of hear her screaming, but they just can't find her, so they feel useless as well. But this is where we get the scene where Death starts stalking them around. She hides in a closet, whatever. But then Grant, who was thrown out of a window, comes back and says, "I'll distract them while you finish the whole thing," because they get an idea, which is that she's going to read the tarot cards for the astrologer so that she will be cursed with her own curse, and maybe that'll trick the system, make, you know, that'll end it, whatever, who knows. And I guess it kind of does, maybe.
So just to put in context, Grant is being chased by like the devil card.
Yes.
Which again, it's kind of disappointing that we don't really see like it. Like, yeah, that'd be cool to show a big devil guy chasing after him. I think you just can't see, again, like little glimpses.
I think at one point the devil opens a portal to what I guess is meant to be hell, and there's like a little bit of like trying not to go in it, but like I actually just remembered it there, but like it's such a forgettable moment. And then you know, this movie does what all these crappy, overly stylized, like generic supernatural movies do, is that The climax has a bunch of CG. You know, we can't just have the astrologer, like her ghost or whatever, like disappear. No, we have to have this CG tornado go around her and like have like all these like big whirling effects and the music soaring as the characters are yelling as she's been taken away. It's just this over the top sequence that is just not fun. And then that just leads us to them walking home, and Paxton shows up, reveals he's alive, and the movie has its one F-bomb at the very end where the main character says F fate and cut the title. But we have to come back to explain why he's alive, so we have that for like a minute, and then it's the credits.
Yeah.
So
it seemed like there maybe could be more of an interesting idea to talk about fate and like, are they all predestined to do this, or is there a way to change it? Like, how much of it is, you know, in their action, and how much of it is like, just the fate of the stars or whatever. But it doesn't really go into
it didn't feel
any
like
of that.
Any of them had a chance of changing a thing, and yet all of a sudden at the end, the final two characters could run away from their things and seemingly keep surviving until they did something to stop it. Because even Paxton still just played into the hands that he was told he was going to do. It just happened not to kill him by the end, which is its own question and can of worms as far as the movie's logic is. So that's had all the frustrations for me of all these types of movies, which is that there's no standard set of rules that the movie sets up and sticks to. The logic's all over the place, which would be fine to an extent as long as all the individual scenes of them being stalked and killed by something were fun scenes. But I don't think they're fun. I think they're all tedious and just like super shit. So there's nothing, and then the characters aren't fun to me either. So there's very little left for me to find any joy in. So here we are.
I do actually think there were some good ideas. I actually do like some of the creature designs and the very, very small glimpses that we get. And I don't know, like I like the idea of, there's all these different creatures and they can kill you in different ways, but I mean, it just doesn't, capitalize on that,
Also,
but
isn't there an implication in the middle when the woman's explaining it that all these things that are coming after them aren't really like the entities that they represent? It's just the astrologer shape-shifting into each one.
Right, yeah. So
that's a little less interesting to me, but
that's fair, yeah. 'Cause I feel like it just raises questions like, so can she just shapeshift at will? Like, does she always have to be this, or?
But could she only do it when she's enacting something from that tarot reading kind of thing? Like she has to do the one that was picked, all a bit messy and just unappealing to me. But I'm glad you found some joy in it, whoever you did. But
I think it's a fun bad movie to watch. Probably more fun, I mean, like a lot of bad movies, it's more fun if you have some friends over or whatever, and you're kind of dunking on it. But
Tim, I would love to have a wife. I'll try and find a wife, but I didn't have one at the ready.
I'll set you up.
Oh, thanks.
There was another line. I forget if it was when the old lady was like given the history of tarot or something, but like she says something. This movie like really wants you to like, after you see it, I feel like it really wants you to be like, I'm gonna go get into tarot too. Like,
oh, you think this is marketing? This is like a stealth like product placement from Big Tarot.
I do think it is like really likes the idea of tarot, and I don't know, there was like some line that just made me laugh where it's like something like, oh, like when you combine like the power of tarot with your horoscope, there's no greater power in the world. I was like, is that true? Like they're making it seem like it's like the biggest cosmic force, which I mean, if people follow tarot and they believe that, I don't mean to belittle any beliefs, but it just seemed like, I just thought it was like something where you kind of get your fortune read and it's just like a fun little thing. I didn't think it was like the most powerful binding cosmic energy.
That's fine. I'll say it, Tim. Horoscopes are lame, and if you believe in that stuff, then at least Santa Claus like brings people joy. Okay, that's all I'll say.
Oh my.
Bunch of nonsense, Tim. It's lame and the movie's lame. That said, though, before we wrap up, you have to pick your favorite scene of the movie.
Oh, naturally. Let me think. I guess I will go. I'll go with the scene with Paxton in the elevator. I guess for a couple of reasons. One, I do feel like the Fool is probably the creature you get to see the most of. So I like that we were actually like seeing more of him. And then again, it was fun seeing how like the stuff was playing out. Like I was like, oh, okay, like beware of descending or ascending numbers or whatever. So it's like, okay, so he's in the elevator. Does that mean he's gonna fall or something? Which, you know, seems like where they're going, but then end up not being. And then yeah, he was kind of annoying, so I was kind of hoping that he was gonna get like a big death or something. But yeah, I guess I'll go with that.
I think I will say there's not really any scenes that I genuinely liked, so the best I can really do is pick the scene that did actually make me laugh, because it was just like the most absurd example of it, and that was the scene where they're looking around, they're all hanging around the computer, they're doing the research, and then they actually say, we're going to go see this woman who they're not even contacted in advance, which feels kind of weird. She's got a web page. Does she not have an email to say, hey, we've got this problem, can we come see you? They just go and see her. That moment is probably the only time in the movie where I laughed out loud, because it's like, okay, you're doing every cliche, not just one research cliche, we're doing all of them. So
I guess her website has her home address listed on there or something.
Which is also stupid. Well, okay, it's not all the cliches, because they don't go to the library and look through old newspapers. That's the one thing they don't do.
If they had like microfiche or something, like like looking at an old newspaper from like 1956 and like 5 friends dead in tarot reading accident.
Tarot reading accident. All right, MVP of the movie.
I want to give it to the tarot cards themselves. I think I like, you know, when they're doing the readings and they're showing the characters on the cards. And then, yeah, again, I wish we saw more of like the creatures from the cards. I don't know if this did well. Maybe if we get a sequel or something, we can expand and do some more characters, or maybe we do some prequels where we see kind of the other incidents that they mentioned.
Please no.
Which I'm curious again how that lady knew about all these incidents, and I was expecting to find out some relevance to the people that have the cards, but it seems like,
oh yeah, we never even find out who owns the house. I thought that was going to be a plot point, like, oh, who's renting this house out? Do they want people to find these cards? Do they just happen to have them? We never even explore that at all.
Like, I think she mentioned something about they were sold in an auction at one point. So I was like, okay, so are these the people that bought them? Do they know what the cards are? Like, it seems like, you know, they have them kind of locked away. But I mean, maybe they just in general don't want people going around their expensive stuff or whatever.
Is this like Ed and Lorraine Warren's mansion, and they're renting it out, and they've just locked up the room with all the spooky artifacts? Like, that seems like a poor choice on their part. Very strange. All right, what's my MVP? I have nothing to go on here. I didn't like any of the characters. There's nothing to go on. They're so bland. There's like nothing to separate them. There's maybe some that are a bit more annoying because they get all the bad dialogue, but that's pretty much it. Like, what can I say? Everyone but Paxton, because he was the one that was obviously more annoying.
That's fair. I mean, whatever you like, go for it.
Okay, whatever. There we go. I'm done. I'm done. That's the movie. Next week, we'll be doing... You gotta
rate it, though.
Oh, sorry, yeah. What are you rating Tarot?
So I admit I did have fun with it, but it still has a lot of problems, and yeah, I can't say it's good by any stretch. So I'm not going to go super high, but I'm going to give it fairly higher than we do some of these, you know, similar generic bad movies. So I think I'm going to go with a 4.5, if you can believe it. I actually really do generally like this premise. And I don't know, I find tarot kind of interesting, and I'm a big fan of Jeff Lemire, and he has this new book coming out soon that is like kind of tarot based, so maybe it's been on my mind a little bit. So
I'm just glad you didn't say he had something to do with this. I was about to be heartbroken.
no. He has a new book that he's writing and drawing, which is always usually a good combination when he writes and draws something that is, I think about like kind of psychics and tarot readers and stuff, and it sounds interesting. But I mean, it's just on my mind because I've been seeing him promoting it and stuff. So yeah, no, I like the idea, and the tarot stuff seems interesting. And I mean, maybe I'm giving it too much credit because I'm saying I like some possible ideas and stuff that it doesn't really actually end up doing. But it was bad and ludicrous in a way that I had a lot more fun with you, and I found myself laughing quite a bit. Just at some of the very blatant, like, oh, this is being so stupid and generic. So yeah, not a good movie, but I surprisingly had some fun with it.
I mean, I was worried you were going to go higher than that, to be honest. I'm going with a 3. I think it's a shit movie. I think it's bad. I don't think it's the worst of its kind. There's definitely worse examples. It's maybe not quite as bad as a Ouija, but not by much. It's kind of in that vicinity for me. I did not really find much of it funny, bad either. Well, one moment in particular was, but other than that, I was just mostly miserable and having a miserable experience. So I can't say much about it. So 3 out of 10, and that's what you're getting from me. So yeah, next week on the show, we'll be looking at a movie that's hopefully good, has more buzz, and I kind of like the last movie the director did, and that is I Saw the TV Glow. So we're changing gears a little bit next week. And we'll be looking at that. And as I said at the start of the show, you can support everything being over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you can get some bonuses for your trouble. You can, get an extra episode every month, an exclusive episode that we do. We do extras in October as well, so worth keeping that in mind for the October-thon coming up. Plus, we do Even More Streams, which is a show where we'll do just different things. We'll maybe do like a random top 5 or top 10. Maybe we'll have a discussion topic. Sometimes Tim will make a little game to either test me with or just like a little thought exercise, but all horror related, obviously. But if that sounds like fun, you can check out that stuff and help support and keep the show coming, as well as all the other shows from MailFuzz Movies and MailFuzz TV. So thank you very much for joining us. As we said, it's been, well, not a pleasure, I can't lie, but it's been a thing. We've been here, we did it, it's over. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. Goodbye.